to serve. And when we saw many people take themselves out of the running, that could have included people who have caregiving responsibilities. And so we're not seeing people who say, I have small children at home who are school-aged. Really, those people have been taken out of this population for the most part, and those who remain are either without children or have adult children.
And Lisa, we also heard from a dismissed juror yesterday after that person left the courtroom. Let's listen.
I think it was a really fascinating contrast between feeling that gravity of not only is someone's fate kind of in our hands here, but the fate of parts of our country's legal system going forward is kind of in our hands because this is unprecedented.
Lisa, is there a sense of sort of the surreal nature of this process among those who are inside the courthouse?
Yes, and you know, during the rest of that interview, that prospective juror sort of took us through her own mental journey. There is first the initial shock of even being in the same room with the former president. That's something I experienced for the first time a year ago at his Florida arraignment when John and I were there together. If you've never been in the same room with the man, after seeing him saturate your television screen for the last almost 10 years, that in and of itself is surreal. But then that juror basically said, then the weight of what we were being asked to do got impressed upon me, and I realized he was a defendant almost like any other. The gravity of the task is what people are left with, rather than the shock of actually potentially standing in judgment of one Donald J. Trump.
Suzanne, let's listen to Trump's response later after court when asked by our own Dasha Burns about his ideal juror. Listen.
Mr. President, what kind of juror in your mind is an ideal juror in this
Anybody
trial?
that's fair.
Do you believe that the jurors seated today
I'll let you
can
know
be fair?
after the trial, depending on
What did you
don't forget, you know, we're appealing.
So an ideal juror, somebody who's fair, then goes on to say they're appealing. He also had comments about the district attorney there. We'll discuss more about the location and what he said there in a moment. But just your reaction to what we heard there and your sense or what we're learning about his mindset and how this process is going.
Well, right away when I heard that, I thought the election's fair if he wins, and the jury will be fair if he's acquitted. I mean, it's just, we've heard it so many times, and I think that's where we're heading. This will go up on appeal, I would imagine. If he loses, it's going to be the same as the civil trial. So I think that's where we're at in terms of his mindset on it. If he wins, it's fair. If he doesn't, it's not.
Is there anything within the jurors who've been seated so far that you think would give him pause?
Well, I think what was striking about yesterday, we sat through the morning session. It reminded me of so many juries that I've sat through. We went through the questionnaires and we heard, you know, people didn't have children, they have dogs, a lot of dog owners on the jury, read the New York Times. There was a thread through it that it's so familiar with other jurors. You know, sometimes they're asked what shows they watch. They weren't in this case, but it was very methodical. But then you're thinking it's going kind of slow, and then we come back in the afternoon and boom, they have objections. And the first objection was juror number 1. The second one was juror number 2. And they had dug around on the social media profiles of them, and they're looking for things, and they should be. But they're looking for things on social media and other places, I'm sure, to try and disqualify, to get the judge to throw them out so they don't have to use one of their own strikes. And then it went very quickly, which it does once you've sort of got a pool that seems agreeable. And we ended up, the end of the day, with 7. It moved not slowly and then very quickly. Yeah. And I think we're going to see the same thing when we're in there tomorrow, because we're going to be going through the questionnaires again, the 42 questions. People at the outset, even before we get to that, are going to say, if you have any reason why you don't want to be here, including if you don't think you can be fair, you're out. And then we'll continue to move through it. But It's going quickly, and I think we're going to see open arguments Monday.
And again, to be clear, we have 7 who've been seated. Right. There needs to be 12 for the actual jury, but they also need 6 alternates, so totaled 18 altogether is what we're looking for at the end of the day. Jonathan, you wrote this, and it stood out. He was the most powerful man in the world and wants that job again. His mastery of media, including social platforms, made him known to virtually every American. The vast majority of them have strong, visceral reactions to him, and that has spilled out in court when it comes to social media, like Suzanne mentioned. We actually heard some of the social media posts made by prospective jurors that were brought up by the defense team. Can you talk to us about what was in those posts and how the judge handled this?
It was really a variety. Some of them were, it ranged from one juror whose husband had posted things that the defense was objecting to. And in fact, the judge admonished Trump through his lawyers not to try to intimidate witnesses, because he apparently motioned toward and spoke to his lawyer while the discussion of that juror was going on. So there's some concern about that, all the way to video of celebrations, based on Trump events. And then there was the one juror where they had posted about Trump's travel ban having been overturned. So a variety of them. A couple of those jurors were struck. One of them, the woman whose husband had posted about Trump, was able to continue. At least the judge allowed her to continue. So a real variety there. I think what's really important to remember, though, and I think by the time you get to the end of the trial, the jurors are going to know this because they're going to hear it over and over and over again. And they aren't going to be reading my pieces or watching these programs. Their job is to determine whether Donald Trump is guilty of the crimes that he's charged with based on the facts that are presented beyond a reasonable doubt. And my guess is that they will be able to do that. If you've ever sat on a jury before, it's pretty solemn stuff. And if it doesn't weigh on you, how solemn that job is, there's something wrong with you and you're not really paying attention to what you're being told. Beyond that, any juror that attempted to affect the outcome of something broader than this case could find that it backfired. It's very unpredictable what will happen politically as a result of this case, whereas trying to apply facts to the law is something that each of them will be capable of doing.
On the social media, just a couple of things stood out to me. You mentioned the guy who had commented on the travel ban, and that was a long time ago, obviously near the beginning of Trump's presidency. The judge said if he had just left it there commenting on the travel ban, that might have been okay for this juror to continue, but it was a follow-up post where he said, get him out and lock him up. And the judge said, boom, that, is going to disqualify you.
It's ironic, too, right, that, Trump has learned, or his lawyers have learned, that he has been held accountable for the things that he's put on social media in past legal actions, including when that travel ban was overturned. And now they're able to say, look, we can look at social media, too. And if somebody's saying lock him up, it's pretty clear that that's a juror who would be seen as impartial. It's also really important, I think, to both sides. I'm sorry, a juror who would be seen as partial. It's important to both sides that these jurors be credible.
Lisa, talk to us more about the moment the judge actually scolded Trump. What happened?
Well, he actually said, I need to put something on the record. He waited for the juror that John was just discussing to leave the room and then said, I need to put something on the record. Mr. Blanche. While the juror was
Mr. Blanche being Trump's
correct,
lawyer.
Todd Blanche, Trump's lead lawyer, saying while this juror was no more than 12 feet away from your client, he was audibly mumbling and gesturing toward the prospective juror. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but it was clear that he was directed toward her. I want to be very clear with you. There will be no witness intimidation in my courtroom. Talk to your client. Yeah. And so in as stern and maybe buttoned up language as he could, making it clear, I will not tolerate that. So you tell your client to cut off with the performative stuff.
Suzanne, Trump stopped at that bodega after court, and we had played that clip with him and Dasha earlier. But this location was strategic for him, right? And I imagine that it had to do with political strategy, in part because this was a controversial case that the district attorney had handled involving a stabbing that happened at that bodega. What does it tell you about his strategy here? What's he trying to gain, and what is he risking?
Well, I think he's in New York, and he's looking to somehow take advantage of at least the venue. I think when the world gives you lemons, sometimes you're going to make lemonade, and I think he's looking for opportunities to do political events around the case. I mean, this is a horrible fact set for them, but they're at least trying to make the most of it in terms of he's in the city. And, he's going to do what he can politically around it, whether it's events around the courthouse or going out to an event like this. And I think we're going to see more of that and more events in the New York City, New York area.
He's here today, right, Jonathan?
I believe so. He's going to be in New York most of the next 6 weeks. He's supposed to be meeting with the Polish president today. But I wonder if he got lemons at the bodega to make the lemonade. I also think it's important, though, in terms of the politics, right? You mentioned what's he doing there? Donald Trump is making a huge push to do better with Latino voters in this election, Latino and Latina voters in this election. I don't think that's a mistake that he stopped at a bodega.
And he's hitting the law and order button as well.
So it'll be Mara Bodega every time he's in New York, I think.
We'll see. And everybody, thank you so much. I know you'll be back in court tomorrow. It was such a treat to be able to have this moment to step back, take a look at where we are and where we're headed. I know the judge has said or indicated we could see opening statements as soon as Monday, depending on how quickly the rest of the jury selection goes. Lisa Rubin, Suzanne Craig, Jonathan Allen, thank you all. Meantime, it could be the quickest impeachment trial in history. Just how quick? Ahead, what to expect in today's impeachment proceedings against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Also on Capitol Hill, a Boeing whistleblower speaks out. What he's telling NBC News exclusively before his testimony about the safety of some planes. Plus, President Biden's campaign message in one key battleground state, including a new nickname for Donald Trump. And later, Olympics fever with the global games just 100 days away. We're back in 60 seconds.
Power E-Trade's award-winning trading app makes trading easier. With its customizable options chain, easy-to-use tools, and paper trading to help sharpen your skills, you can stay on top of the market from wherever you are. E-Trade from Morgan Stanley.
I love your dress.
Oh, thanks. I splurged a little because Liberty Mutual customized my car insurance and I saved hundreds.
That's great.
I know, right? I've been telling everyone.
Liberty.
Did you hear that? I just said her first word. Can you say mama?
Liberty.
Can you say auntie?
Liberty.
How many people did you tell?
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, liberty, liberty.
Liberty.
Breathing Claritin Clear is like...
Pretty girls walk like this.
Is he?
Claritin Clear? Yeah.
Fast relief of your worst allergy symptoms, like nasal congestion. Live Claritin Clear.
In just a few hours, a historic impeachment trial set to get underway in the Senate. All 100 senators are set to be sworn in as jurors for the trial of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas this afternoon. But the case could be dismissed almost as soon as it starts. NBC's Ryan Nobles is standing by on Capitol Hill. Also with us, former Democratic Congresswoman from Maryland, Donna Edwards, and former Republican Congressman from Pennsylvania, Charlie Dent. Ryan, what will this impeachment trial look like? Will there actually be a trial?
Yeah, not in any sort of conventional sense, Anna. In fact, it won't even look like the prior impeachment trials that we've seen of the former President Donald Trump or even President Bill Clinton before him. There will likely be some effort by Republicans to try and gum up with the works a little bit, make their point that there should be a full and complete trial. But it's just not something that Democrats have the appetite for, and the Democrats have the vote. So there will be a little bit of drama once they gavel in at 1 o'clock. But the actual form and fashion of how the trial extends itself, we'll have to wait and see. But there's a very good chance the whole thing could be wrapped up at some point today.
Let's remind everyone what was in that bipartisan bill that Republicans quashed as they talk about what they see as the Secretary of Homeland Security not upholding